Folks, on this channel, we do a lot of talking about buying first-time homes, being investors. We don't really talk about sellers because I don't do it a lot. But we're going to talk with Beth
Yeah,
Traverso, who does that for a living, talk about
right.
selling a home, pricing it right, what she looks at, what she coaches. Beth, the floor is yours because I have
Hey
very little
there.
experience with selling.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this is what I do. I help people price their homes, and it's one of my many roles that I play is as a listing agent. So and I work in the I'll preface this by saying I work in the greater Seattle area. If people are wondering, I run a team here. We do a lot of listings. Um, and I think that there's a lot of insights that even if you're a buyer and not a seller, it's important to understand the psychology. If you're a buyer, you're working with a seller, and it's important to see the psychology of everything that's going into this process. So um, the one thing I would say is that if pricing, it's really important to be ready to pivot. So when I'm talking with somebody, like I just talked with a prospective seller last night, and I gave an opinion of what I thought the value should be today, with the note that today is not the day to pick the list price. The time to do that is about a week before we go on the market, because things are changing every single week. So you need to just kind of keep yourself flexible about that. One of the key things for pricing that I recommend when I have, because sometimes I'll have homeowners reach out to me, like, well, how come you're not going to count this house for, as a comparable to mine? And it's really important that you're comparing like for like. And how I look at it is, if I was a buyer looking at your house, which houses would I be looking at when I'm comparing to yours? And so, for example, if we have, I work in an area with a lot of rural acreage properties. So if we have an acreage property with a shop, let's say, we're not going to compare it with a subdivision house on a 5,000 square foot lot. And so the price per square foot on that one might, in another area too, another neighborhood, might be high, maybe higher than your price per square foot. Irrelevant. We want to be looking at the properties that your buyer is going to be looking at. So a lot of marketing a property is identifying who your buyer is, what they care about in the property. So, is it the view? Is it the outbuildings? Is it the utility of the land? Is it updates? What is it for that buyer? So you want to think about what your buyer is looking for, and we want to make sure that we're comparing the proper houses. So, and if I'm not looking at houses in other areas, I'm not looking at houses that don't have the same buyer. Like if somebody with a postage stamp lot is not going to want acreage, and vice versa. Like
Okay.
that's not the same buyer. So you need to make sure you're comparing with the right houses, and look at the houses that are closest to you too. I know appraisers do that too. Like they're not going to look outside the neighborhood if they have good comparables inside the neighborhood. So, as much as we want to try to make a price higher by looking at different things further out, we want to try to make sure we're focusing on the right properties closest to you.
Mhm.
Um, and keep in mind also, sometimes people get a little bit too fixated on square footage when there are a lot of things. I mean, if you're looking at a condo building in New York City, it's going to be very square footage driven. So it's going to depend on your market. But I know where I am, there's a lot of things that will influence the price that have nothing to do with square footage. And that has to do with, again, like the land, the view, the outbuildings, the updates. All those things have nothing to do with square footage. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the totality of it. I work with a lot of unique properties as well, where there's no other one like it, and that's pretty typical for a lot of the properties I work with. So what you want to do again is just kind of put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, maybe expand your area out a little bit, maybe go back in time to look at other ones that are similar to you and kind of track. And it's also, we just did a video looking back in time a little bit to see what the fluctuations are in the market. So sometimes you can look at something from 4 months ago and then make some adjustments based upon what we're seeing to where we are now. I like to stay as close in time as possible. Another good tip is to look at, sometimes when it's really easy to get stumped with a unique property, you want to look at properties that we know for sure are lower than us and properties that we know for sure are higher than us. So we say, okay, we go over this price, buyers are going to expect more square footage, remodeled kitchen, whatever the case may be. Okay, we're not that high. These other ones that are lower than us, they don't have the second bathroom, they don't have the garage, they don't have the quiet neighborhood, whatever the case may be. So you can bracket it and then narrow it in that way too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's so much in there, but I've got to ask, why don't you just go to Z estimates and just pick that number?
Yeah, so I partnered with Zillow for many years. I was part of their inner circle, loved them over there. They're a local Seattle company. Even the CEO of Zillow will tell you that it's just an algorithm. So, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I mean, I look at that too, you
Of
know.
course.
But for example, where I am, I'm on 5 acres, and but I'm close to an area where there's a subdivision, and so the proximity of the algorithm, it keeps wanting to show these subdivision houses and compare them to my house, and I know that's not correct. And even they know it too. You know, they'll tell you it's within about I don't know what it is now, but last I looked, it was around a 8 to 10% high or low. That's
Right.
a pretty wide range there.
Yeah,
So
having looked at lots of real estate over the years, having had this conversation a lot of times, what I keep telling folks, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, you've actually worked with them, I never have. Basically, what I use that as is at best it's after repair value, right? It's
yeah,
if the house is dialed in, that's what it could be worth. And I think a lot of people miss that. I can't tell you how many times people have brought me unupdated properties from the 50s. That's
yeah.
the 1950s. And, the classic 3-1, 912 square feet, and trying to compare it to a 3-2 that's, 20 years old because it's close. I'm like, come on.
It's a
What?
computer, they make it
Yeah.
pretty good, but it's still just an algorithm, and it will never take the place of human beings evaluating property. But it is good to know. I always check the
Sure. Why not?
Zillow and Redfin to see what their estimates are before I do my own.
Yeah, me too.
Um, but another thing I want to say about that, a couple things about that is, for some of the they call them Zestimates, but so the Zestimate is I've gotten some pretty good deals, I want to say, because that's
Me
what we
too.
do on this channel, right? We find the
Yep.
excellent deals and we buy them, and then fix them up. And so this part of my process is we fix up the properties, but
Yep.
they still have the great price I bought it from 5 years ago. And so the algorithm has it way low, it does
Yeah.
it because it doesn't know what we did, so.
Yeah.
And when
Exactly.
people are worried about the Zestimate or the Redfin estimate or whatever being way off, is just know that they changed it a handful of years back. They had some contest where I think they were offering people up like $1 million to make the Zestimate better.
Mm.
And somebody won that prize. But then the only noticeable change I saw, I'm sure there's more to it than this, so I don't want to discount that. But
Yeah.
the main thing I saw was when a listing agent lists a home, let's say we list it for $600,000 and the Zestimate might have been 480, boom, it instantly moves to 600,000 the minute it hits the market. So even the
Interesting.
algorithm knows that what the list price is a far better
It's
indicator
far
of.
closer than whatever they had before.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So I wouldn't put too
Okay.
much into that. I don't think that there's so many variables, like I mentioned, that can influence a price that no computer algorithm will ever know. Like I
What
just
what
picked that
is
list of things I just went through, that it's always going to require a human to go in there and look at it.
what is the I have a guess, but we're gonna I'll share my answer regardless of what you say. But what is the hardest, because you have unique properties, what is the hardest thing to price or put a value on? Acreage, view, all these, because it's not square footage, it's not bathrooms, it's not bedrooms. That's all math. But when you have unique properties, what's the hardest thing to put a number of value on? What do you think?
Yeah. So, I would say it's more about like balancing all the factors together and trying to
Okay.
figure out how it's going to cumulatively impact the price.
Hmm.
So, but the thing that has the biggest change, the biggest amount of variable in my area is the utility of the land.
Okay.
So
There
I
you
know it's
go.
very unique, because where we are in just outside Seattle, it's very, very restrictive what you can do with the land. So you might have
Sure.
5 acres and think, oh, I should be able to build a ADU, clear this forest, fill in this pond or whatever. You're not going to be able to do probably any of that. So, yeah,
Got it.
sensitive areas.
Sure.
They make it so you can't do very much with the land. So you could have a
Okay.
5 acre property that's on a slope and has wetlands, and you might not be able to do anything with it. You maybe got your little area cleared where you've got your house, and that's it. You might not even be able to build a shop, which is a
Wow.
big deal around here.
Okay.
Or and then you might have another one that might be a level, clear, dry park like acreage where you can have horses, you can have gardens, you can
Right.
build
Okay.
outbuildings and things. So that is going to have a huge influence on the value, even though they
Yeah.
both might be 5 acre parcels.
Yeah, that's to me that feels a lot more like math, like there's a formula there. The thing that I was leaning on, and again, I told you I'd share it regardless of what you said, was view,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have to assume in King County there are some spectacular views,
Yes.
and I think there are, I think views matter, especially if you're buying at those price points, seven figures and above.
Yep.
You know,
They
one view
do.
might be worth 500,000 and another one's worth 50 grand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just guessing.
And it is
I've
a
never
little
had to
bit
make that
subjective.
decision.
Yeah. And the best
Yeah.
thing is to, yeah, sometimes you have to go cast your net a little wider and look a little further to find other view properties, you know? So it's the whole thing together, you know? So if something has usable land and a great view, that it's going to be worth even more, you know, than
Ah, there you
something
go.
that,
Yeah.
because a lot of them are on hills and they might have more views on the hill,
Right.
but then you
But
can't
they
have
lose the
your
land. Yeah.
barn or whatever, you know. And again, it's all very specific. Every area has their things, their hot button things.
Yeah.
Riverfront is another thing. Like if you're on the river
Ah, river.
or a
Yeah.
lake, that's going to add that. Then you're looking at waterfront. And so we want to be only comparing to other waterfront.
Yeah.
So,
So at the end of the day, if you are a seller, you do not rely solely on Z estimates. You've got to be working with a professional. If you're not working with Beth Traverso in King County, you are making a mistake. How should they reach out to you, Beth?
yeah, so through my website, bethtraversogroup.com, or just Google my name, pretty easy to find out there.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Thanks.